Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're already managing a team, or if you're a management student working your way up, we're about to completely flip how you view the supposedly objective numbers you deal with every single day. We all rely on data to make decisions, right? But today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see how those numbers actually shape organizational reality.
Okay, picture this. You're sitting in a really high-stakes management meeting. You look up at the screen in the front of the room, and a single figure flashes up. 7.4.
Then the label pops up, Employee Engagement, 7.4. I mean, it looks so clean, doesn't it? Precise, completely objective. And in a real boardroom, a number like this carries massive weight. It could literally dictate who gets a sudden budget increase, whose department gets celebrated, or, on the flip side, who gets slapped with a stressful performance improvement plan.
But what does a 7.4 actually mean? Let's dig into the messy, hidden reality behind that number. Because that 7.4, it didn't just fall from the sky. Someone in your organization actually had to sit down and decide what counts as engagement. They had to choose which employees to survey, how to word the questions, what to do if people just didn't answer, and, crucially, what context or data to completely ignore.
The truth is, every single organizational number has a hidden production history. It moves through a complex chain of highly subjective human choices long before it ever reaches your clean executive dashboard. Think about it. First, there's a purpose. Then, someone has to conceptualize an incredibly complex idea, like quality or sustainability. Next, they draw boundaries on what's included, and they rely on proxies, like, say, using a 1 to 5 survey as a stand-in for actual human feelings. Finally, the data gets produced and presented. That is a massive amount of invisible labor and judgment.
Now, because of all this subjective labor, we have to realize something absolutely crucial. Yes, numbers are constructed, but they aren't fake. They're not just arbitrary inventions. A well-constructed measurement can give us incredibly reliable knowledge. But as managers and future leaders, we have to be critical thinkers. We need to evaluate the construction choices. Would the process produce consistent results? That's reliability. Does it measure what it claims to measure? That's validity. And is it actually suitable for the decision being made? That's relevance. We have to judge these things instead of just accepting the data blindly because it looks like hard math.
To make dashboards actually function at the scale of a massive global organization, we rely on a powerful mathematical and social process called commensuration. Commensuration is basically translating inherently different qualities into a common metric to make unlike things comparable. If you're leading a team or planning to, this is a concept you absolutely have to master.
So how does this actually work in practice? Well, commensuration takes deeply complex, messy realities, things like employee well-being, unique cultural heritage, or irreversible ecological loss, and forces them into standardized variables. It translates them into a simple 1 to 10 risk score, or maybe a dollar amount. And look, this reduction of context is completely necessary to make large-scale organizational coordination even possible. But the price we pay? It's the loss of nuance. It makes certain differences highly visible while rendering other things entirely irrelevant to management.
But if you look a little closer, you start to see the true dark side of metrics. We call this reactivity. Reactivity is what happens when a measurement actually changes the behavior and relationships it initially set out to measure. The very second a number becomes important to leadership, like when it gets tied to bonuses, promotions, or public targets, people instantly alter their behavior to respond to it. The measurement changes the reality it was supposed to just passively observe.
This reactivity creates some serious pitfalls of quantification that every manager needs to watch out for. Take proxy substitution, for example. That's where hitting a sustainability score completely replaces actual meaningful sustainability efforts. Or goal displacement, where people pursue narrow targets over broader organizational objectives. Then there's false precision. When a model spits out a number like 12.47, and those extra decimal places create this dangerous illusion of exactness that hides massive underlying uncertainty. And we can't forget aggregation loss, whereas satisfactory average score entirely conceals a severe, extreme failure in one specific department. You've also got short-termism, favoring immediate results, and ethical concealment, where deep moral choices get buried in calculations.
We've all heard the old adage, what gets measured gets managed. But, as we're seeing, it may also get manipulated. Just think about it. If your sales team is only evaluated on quarterly revenue, they are inevitably going to offer steep, future-damaging discounts just to hit that immediate metric. They're complying with the rules, sure, but they're actively undermining the long-term health of the company.
What this all means is that quantification is an undeniable form of power and discipline. It is not just innocent record-keeping. Whoever designs the metric ultimately dictates what is visible to the CEO and what remains invisible. They classify the boundaries that dictate who gets resources and who gets promoted. And in today's digital workplaces, these metrics enable constant, everyday self-surveillance. Employees actually police their own behavior to match normalized standards of performance long before a manager even has to say a single word.
The numbers made us do it. Honestly, how often have you heard this exact phrase used by leaders? It is the ultimate managerial cop-out. It's used to hide the profoundly human and, yes, ethical choices that are deeply embedded in every calculation. Whether it's weighting safety against cost or applying a discount rate to future environmental harm, human values are driving the math. A model can certainly inform a decision, but it can never carry the accountability for you.
So how do we actually fix this? Well, to stop being blindly led by your dashboard, you can use the Managerial Diagnostic. It's a fantastic 12-question toolkit that forces you to reflexively interrogate 3 things: the setup of the number, its impact, and the ethics behind it. Ask yourself things like, what phenomenon is this really? What disappears from view when we use this metric? How will people change their behavior once this number actually matters? And who has the power to challenge it?
When you start managing reflexively, you change the whole game. You begin with the actual decisions and purpose, not just whatever data happens to be available. You separate the complex phenomenon from its simple indicator. You combine metrics with real qualitative knowledge, stepping away from the spreadsheet to actually talk to your team. You preserve the measurement chain, and you anticipate that reactivity before you ever attach a reward to a target. And importantly, you actively review and retire obsolete metrics that no longer serve your organization.
Look, numbers are easily among the most essential technologies of modern organizations. We absolutely need them to condense complexity and coordinate action across the globe. But they are a tool, and tools require a master. So the next time you sit in that boardroom staring at a beautifully designed, supposedly objective dashboard, I want you to stop and ask yourself, are you managing your numbers, or are your numbers managing you?